That's perfect.
This meeting is being
Hello, amazing hackers. I hope you're doing well today. I have with me Mr. Elsec Cutie. You should go check out his YouTube channel. Mr. James Beers also has a YouTube channel linked below. Dark Shield CS doesn't have a YouTube channel, but is a good friend of ours. So today we're talking about mental health, and Mr. Beers had a really interesting story about autistic people and Pagan beliefs. If you don't mind telling that, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, let me put my dad break down here for a second. So, I'm pagan. My family's pagan. And I was raised Christian. That's a whole religious thing. But back in the day, in the pagan villages, if you had a mental disability that we would classify a mental disability now, like autism, right? They would actually support that person. So like say you were born autistic and like severely autistic, like you didn't like people touching you and you couldn't speak the language at all that you were born into, right? They would make you a monk of a monastery, and that's where you would be. You would be in that service to whatever area that they had. The whole village would support you, and it wouldn't be looked on as you were somebody to be kicked out of the village. You weren't somebody to be discarded. You were somebody to be celebrated because you were different. It had to say like schizophrenia, people who heard voices, they would be called prophets and guides, and people would come to them to hear like what they had to say about that person and their energies. And it is a completely different mindset than what we have now about mental disabilities and stuff. And I just thought it was pretty interesting.
See, I find that very interesting indeed, because right now we have gone through a period where if you had any kind of mental diversity, neurodivergence, however you want to call it, you were put in a mental hospital and probably lobotomized for a period of time. That's scary shit, like that. You might think that that's just stories, but if you look into it, that really did happen. There's research into it and shit like that. And like,
And
of
why do you
course,
guys think that transition happened? I mean, from a person who's becoming a shaman to a person going permanently to a hospital. Why do you think that happened?
I
that's a
think it's the
great question.
attitudes. The attitudes changed just like they change with everything else, right? I mean, there's influences from there's social influences, there's religious influences, there's cultural influences, and all of those things together shape our general attitudes towards anything. There's certain crimes, there's sorry. Easy, man. Easy. You're gonna kill yourself.
I couldn't hold it. Sorry about that, guys. I really couldn't hold
That's fine. I couldn't hold that one in.
Bill's mental health story takes the
yeah.
biggest
So,
rip ever on the stream.
I mean, like, perfect example. This is a bigger discussion for not probably for this cast, but a really important, interesting discussion is about how laws of the land match up with moralities of the time, and so take like marijuana, for example. There's been this, in the US, this huge stigma for decades and decades about marijuana. And then all of a sudden enough people vote, and like the state I'm in, New York, it's legalized. So what do you do with those decades of stigma? What do you do with all those videos made saying how you're a terrible person, or you're going to kill yourself if you use it, and all of these campaigns that are touting that it's not only illegal but it's immoral, and then all of a sudden it's just no one cares anymore. So it's a really, again, a longer discussion for another time about how these came to be. I think the same thing happened with mental health. You get, all of a sudden, culture changes the way that they want to look about it, and now there's new attitudes.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity played a big part in segmenting mental illness, because they went into these villages and noticed that the shamans and the elders that were taken care of, and the special people, the enlightened ones, were celebrated more than the bishops who were coming into the towns. So they declared that ungodly, and they started taking those people out of those places, and it just became so normalized that that's what you did. Now we have mental health care facilities. Now we have, places where you segment those people. And I'm not saying they're bad things. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that maybe it should have been handled differently, and maybe it still could,
Yeah, the problem is that it still is very stigmatized and people are ashamed of admitting it. Like it becomes a shame in culture when you say you have autism, for example, because you get ostracized as well from a lot of jobs, for example. The world is built for normal people, of course. So it's normal that people who are not normal feel not normal and that they feel a little bit left out. I think we should take real good notice of that when that happens, and try to play into that as well. That's been plaguing me a lot. Like for me, it's been a lot of autism, ADHD, or ADD, I should say. And those two things are mostly controlling a lot of the actions that I take as well. And I didn't even realize it. Like when I was a kid, I used to give every single teddy bear that I had a kiss before I went to bed. And it was like every single one. And it started with one kiss, and then it was 2 kisses, 3 kisses, and it kept adding up and adding up. And I was like, in the end, busy with a 20-minute ritual before I could even go to sleep. And nobody ever explained to me that that wasn't normal. For me, that was normal. That was my world, of course. Like, if anybody knows something about autism, you probably do. It is that you live in your own world to a degree, And I don't think it's a bad thing. Over the years, I've learned to use it as kind of a superpower. And people say that's too much of a strong word, superpower. But I don't think so. Autism makes you think different, and it really helps a lot. So I don't think people should be ashamed of anything that they're suffering from, is what I'm getting at,
Well, to be honest, everyone is pretty much is living in his own world, and that's where the power of the human being comes from. When you understand that you are responsible for everything going on in your life, and no matter what are you dealing with, if it's autism or not, you are responsible for your actions and your outcome of your life. So it's like everyone should be like the best version in their world, and of course you can be always viewed as someone crazy or someone, let's say, bad person in someone else's eyes, but the point is that in the end of the day, to be the hero of your own life, of your own world. So yeah.
I think that's a powerful definition, being the director of your own world, because my worldview is kind of the fact that the world will end anyway. The universe is expanding, and eventually even electrons will be ripped from atoms and shit like that. So for me, it was like, if it's all gonna end anyway, there is no point to doing anything. So why not try to be the best moral version of yourself? And that's kind of been my worldview. But I still notice to this day that things that people find normal are things that I find very strange sometimes. It's hard to describe, because when you live it, you find it hard to describe. But when you're an outside observer, it's a lot easier. Like my wife, she always tells me, for example, that when I eat French fries, for example, I always eat around the mayonnaise and then the fries with the mayonnaise itself. If I do it differently, I'm very upset and I even throw away my food. And she says that's not normal. For me, that's the most normal thing in the world, because you have to eat it that way. If you don't, it's like how I tried to live my life. I tried to save the best for last, save for with the fries. And I know it's a stupid story, but it shows how stupid this shit can be.
Well, to be
I don't
honest,
I
one
don't
of
think
the yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
I don't think that's stupid at all. I think that shows that you have a level of conformity of your own control. So you understand that if you eat those fries and you eat one with the mayonnaise on it without eating around it, that's going to be thrown away. But I bet you apply that same kind of micro attention to the work that you do. right?
Yeah, I've sent you the course requirements document that I have, right? I don't know
Exactly.
if it's
So
like,
it's about understanding that, yeah, that is a quirk. That sucks, right? But the way that that's applied in the other parts of your life is wonderful, and nobody else can do it. It's like, okay, with me, my spectrum, if I have a doctor's appointment or a meeting or somebody wants to talk to me and it's 5 hours from now, I'm literally doing nothing for 5 hours until I talk to them. Nothing, not a damn thing. And that's because my brain says, this is your next target. This is your next project. This is your next thing that you're doing, and nothing is in between that. So I find myself trying to fill that time in. But then I also find that when I'm working on a project or I'm doing work, and you've seen this, I sit down and I literally carry out my intention, and I carry it out to the fullest ability, and then I stop. And so that's the flip side of that, you know? Yeah, if somebody tells me they want to talk to me and they don't tell me a time, I will be waiting all day for them to talk to me, all day. But also, if somebody hands me a job, it will be done.
One definition that I could throw out there, or one source, is stigma always grows where there's lack of understanding. Okay, so when you don't have a deep understanding of a subject, you know, the human mind is designed to make assumptions. You know, we all do it. It's the way that we've survived all this time. You know, we have to build an idea based off the data we have. You know, so we used it in the wild. You know, there'd be a tiger or a lion. You know, you see one that attacks. You see other similar cats and, you know, creatures. You can sense danger from those things, and you notice things like it's very hard to find a mental health worker who stigmatizes mental health. And why? I mean, is it just because they love working on mental health and they were just born to do that? Well, no, it's because they understand it. They have a deep understanding of it. So, you know, that ends up opening up things. So talk about bigotry and, you know, discrimination between different types of people, different groups. Almost 100% of the time, it's always sourced from lack of understanding. It's assumptions based on generalized things without getting really can prove is real is what's right in front of you in your own small world. So the internet, the advent of this electronic world brings us information from the entire world. We're not really designed to process all that. We're not designed to understand all of that. You know, you can know your community well, you can know the people around you, but you know, you're not really going to understand those other realities until you experience it yourself. You know, that goes for me, it goes for everybody. So I think mental health, to reel it in, mental health is no different. It's schizophrenia, like that's a big one. Bipolar disorder, you know, it's thrown all out there now. There's memes, there's jokes, there's all these things that sort of build it up as, you know, the stereotypical case of those things. And then that creates stigma based off of those things. And so people are scared of schizophrenic people. People are terrified of, you know, people assume that bipolar people are a certain thing. It's a very complicated disease. My mother suffers pretty badly. You know, it's taken her entire life to find the right combination of meds that keep her stable. And, you know, there's been extreme things that happen. So anyway, to shut up about that, that's my thought, is that I think there's a better future out there, and it comes with actually taking the time to understand these struggles from people that experience them.
Did you?
What I can add
Oh,
is
no.
pretty much, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick that the CIA and the FBI actually prefer people who are naturally paranoid and even people who are naturally schizophrenic, because the paranoid people are people who are always on the lookout. And the schizophrenic people are easier to teach a new identity, since they are so dissolved from their own ego. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is pretty much there's a little chance that a person can get like born with such kind of bad thing inside, but there are chances that he might develop one while growing up. So what I can like suggest people is to don't like, I know it sounds cliche, but don't follow people's advice or opinion, because that's the thing. You live in your own world, and by definition, people are judging a lot. So, and that's why bad things happen, because when you go through life, you are always getting judged about something, and if you feel bad about it, there's a chance you might develop some bad thing inside. And the point is that even though it sounds cliche, just don't fall for that trap and don't allow anyone's judgment affect you. I mean, I'm not saying don't listen to anyone. Of course you should, and of course you should get like a advice from each one. But there's a big difference between getting advice from someone and accepting his critical judgment. So keep that difference.
That's a really important point. I used to work in mental health, and uh, what they teach you, the first thing they teach you in mental health is de-escalation. Okay, so let's say LSEC is super pissed, way pissed off. Okay, and he thinks that I'm a demon and he's gonna come stab me with a fucking knife. All right, and we're sitting down at dinner. Okay, I just taught him how to cook. I just taught him how to cook dinner. We were all cool in the kitchen, but we go to sit down and eat, and instantly I'm his enemy and he's gonna stab me with a fucking knife. Mental health tells you to identify with that person. First thing, identify with them. That doesn't mean tell them who you are. That means understand where they're coming from. If Elsec thinks that I'm a demon and he's going to stab me with a knife, well, then I'm a demon and he's going to stab me with a knife. I need to identify with that and make myself safe so I can tell him who I really am and get him through this episode. Once you get into mental health and you start working in mental health, they tell you that that person is not crazy. That person is not sick. They just have a hard time understanding reality. And it's your job to help guide them through reality because their reality is fucked up. And that's all mental health is I'm here to help you do daily human tasks because you don't live in the same reality that I do. And that's okay. And like 100% your job is to make them feel okay and make them feel heard and make them feel safe. That's it. And I mean, for people who have never been in mental health, they wouldn't know that. They would be like, oh, well, all they do is watch them all day and give them meds. No, our job is to make them feel heard, make them feel seen, and make them feel safe, and make them understand and have real experiences, like going and playing frisbee in the backyard. There are people who have never done that because they've been locked inside of facilities, because nobody has taken the time to take them outside and say, hey, let's throw a frisbee around. Nobody taught them how to do that in their reality, right? I mean, that's the stance that I come from in mental health. I mean, it makes me really sad. Doggy. It makes me really sad that these facilities and these places try and treat the patients like they're a paycheck, but then teach the staff to take care of them 100%. And I mean, that's frustrating, but mental health care is a very eye-opening thing for mental health. And then coming out of it knowing that I have mental occurrences of my own. I have ADHD and I have autism and uh uh I have manic episodes and manic depressive episodes, which are two different things. Manic episodes mean that I can be wired for like 4 or 5 days, right? And just be like hyped and be happy. And then manic depressive is the same type of energy, but depression. So it's really weird, but it really helps you understand yourself if you take some time and take care of somebody or do some service work or something like that.
That's really important what you said there, that taking care of somebody else, because you as a neurodivergent person has gone through this shit. You know what it's like, and you can help others with your experience and just being a listening ear. In Narcotics Anonymous, we were taught to be helpful by just listening in the first place, being there for the person when yeah, so they didn't have to suffer alone. That's very important. I felt very isolated at a certain point, and I think a lot of you did as well. Like, who are we? We didn't belong to any group. At least I didn't. I wasn't a jock. I wasn't a sports guy. I wasn't really a video gamer. I played games, but it was like more casual and shit like that. I didn't really belong to any group. Well, I was a goth kid. I had like huge spikes around my neck. I had the trench coat on. I had like the boots on, the combats. I miss that time sometimes. I really do.
And then
School time was
and then you go to
awesome.
treatment and you go to drug meetings and stuff for addiction, and so your baseline, right, Wesley? Your baseline has always been isolation, right? Just like mine, right? Always been isolation. I was a
Exactly.
single kid. I never had any friends. I always, I was the one who was supposed to look out for myself, and I played with myself, and I played with my imagination. That was my world. And then you catch an addiction, right? You go out and you look for something that's going to stimulate your mind. You get it addicted to it, and then you come back, and in treatment they're saying, well, just don't isolate yourself, just communicate with other people. And it's like, motherfucker, you think that if it was that easy I would have already done it by now?
Yeah, and sometimes like I have a certain level, I call it my social energy battery. And if it's drained for the day, it's drained. And sometimes it starts off at 20%, sometimes it's full, but when it's done, it's done. And like communication only gets me so far as well. At least for me, I get stuck in my own mind a lot, in mind loops, and then somebody comes with some very simple things and I'm like, bitch, do you think I really didn't think about that yet? I've been thinking about this for hours. I know you want to help. I really do. And I super appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. But that stuff only frustrates me more. It's like with the pain condition I have, people suggesting really basic stuff to me. I super, super appreciate that everybody's concerned about that. But believe me, I've tried everything: acupuncture, chiropractor, food, exercise, anything you can think of. Fucking homeopathy, even though I don't believe in that shit, man. I've tried everything. And like, it's the
And
same
have
with
you tried
mental
getting a
health.
dog like that one?
Sorry? A
Have you
dog
tried
like that.
getting a dog that, yeah, because it
Hold
really
on for a
helps.
second. Go ahead, talk ahead. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I get what Wesley's saying, man. Every girlfriend I've ever had has been like, well, do you need to smoke so much weed? Like, do you really need to smoke that much weed? I started smoking weed when I was like 10, dude, right? And every
Oh.
girlfriend I've had, she's like, do you really need to smoke that much weed? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. Except for this one.
And by how much? How much
She
you mean
smokes
how
she
much?
smokes just as much weed as I smoke, but
Wow.
because she has body pain and stuff like me. So every girlfriend except for my wife that I have now has tried to give me alternatives to smoking weed. Like, what if I give you a back massage every night? Or what if we try, foods with high fibers so they can, release your back? Or what if we try this? What if we try that? And I'm like, dude, it's been 25 years I've dealt with this shit and I deal with it on a constant basis. Do you think I haven't tried that?
Yeah. And it's like eventually you find a combination of CBD and THC that really works for you. And then you stick with it. But because, like, in this world, everybody wants to just get high as shit. You get so much terrible weed. And at least in my area, you can buy from your local dealer and you will always get amnesia, which is like the worst shit ever. Or you can go to a coffee shop. Everything is high THC. And now finally they're coming out with more CBD only products as well. Like I have a CBD topical that I put on my back that works really, really well. And like the CBD drops for my mental health do wonders as well. I don't feel nearly as stressed anymore. Just
So I may ask here, in what situation you find that useful? I mean, really useful.
sorry, in what?
In what
Sorry.
scenarios you find smoking really useful?
For me, in the pain reduction scenario, because it's either that or taking heavy pain medication like tramadol, which is very addicting. It's an opioid, and it's like heroin. Believe me, I've tried every drug. Our drug story is gonna come out soon, and that shit is worse than heroin for me. Like kicking off of it is really, really bad. So it's either smoking, and right now it's pure CBD that I smoke mostly, but still it has a big effect on me. And it's the pure CBD strains don't just contain CBD. Cannabis contains so many active ingredients. It's like not just those two, those are just the most well known. So it really depends on what strain helps best for you and stuff like that. But mostly the drops help really well. It's super concentrated CBD, so you just put a few drops on your tongue and you're good for a few hours, you know? That really helps. And then the back rub as well, like it's just a cream that you put on that really helps. And in the mental health scenarios, it really helps me in a sense that I'm a lot happier and calmer with my day. I work at a theme park. I have to hang out with kids all fucking day. These are school kids. These are annoying sometimes. I love them to death because I love working at the theme park. But believe me, they can be annoying. They can jump off the horse before it's in the station. They can throw their shit and just in the bins. They literally throw. Last time somebody threw one of those slushy cups in the bin for the baggage, and we had to clean it up. But like we didn't have anything to clean it up. You know, we were at a roller coaster. What are you gonna clean it up with? Your shirt? So that was a mess. It was high summer, bees everywhere. You can imagine. Uh, dealing with people
Well,
like that.
you remind me of a story of mine where, like, before 5 or 6 years or so, my actually second job in my lifetime was to be like I'm not sure how it's called in English, but the guy who like play with the kids when they are like 8 or more years old. Not sure how is that in your country, but yeah, I was taking care of different kind of kids. And one night they were asking me to, they were so hyped up and asked me to like watch a horror movie. And do you guys watch Conjuring?
Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
know.
I've seen The Conjuring. Yeah.
They shat themselves absolutely. Their mother, and in that moment I realized that I'm not for that job, and I decided to go and start hacking. Yeah, so oh, just a little like off the
Yeah, like
topic.
sometimes when I'm at that theme park before it opens, it's creepy as fuck, man. The music is playing, nobody's
Yeah,
there. You're not used to that. You're used to people being everywhere, and it's like scary sometimes.
yeah, absolutely.
Soon we will have the Halloween nights, and we will be open until late at night and the summer evenings as well. That'll be fucking fun, man. I look forward to that stuff. And that has
Like,
done, sorry?
go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that has done wonders for my mental health because I'm outside, I'm with people, I get to make their day. I'm usually standing with this little horses, you know, where the little kids go on. And every time I say like, hey, little princess, your horse is ready. And you should see them smile, you know, it really makes me happy. And if they want the black horse, I'll send the white horse on empty so they can have this black one specifically, you know. Just making fun for people is something that I love to do, which is like, I don't know why. The reason I didn't do this before was because of money. Let's be honest, it makes shit money, dude. It's like literally minimum wage. So you really shouldn't do that stuff for the money, but I do it for fun. I have my pen testing company. You guys know that. That's where I make the money. And for the rest, I do that kind of stuff where I have fun, you know. I've been having for the past 3 years, I had this mentality of I need to buckle down completely, not have a day off in my life anymore for a couple of years, and then I can set up something where I can actually have some more time off to myself. And funnily enough, discipline has created freedom for me, because that discipline has given me 70,000 followers on Twitter, given me an audience to which I can market my stuff, my pen testing, without having to pay a single dollar. It has worked well, but it has cost me a lot of sanity as well. 3 years without having a day off, like, Jesus. Never do that,
And I
guys.
have another question. Pretty much you say that smoking helps you both physically and mentally. So where do you define the border of being addicted and using for self-help?
It's a good question.
I could answer this.
Yeah, sure.
Well, Rat has walked away. So he's back.
Oh, no, he's back. He's back.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just putting the guinea pig back. The guinea pig wanted to eat me. He was literally nibbling on me already. I always thought the rabbit was a fuck face, but damn, that guinea pig is fucking sneaky. He looks all cute at you and suddenly he bites like this. Anyway, where do I define the line between addiction and use
And
for
self-help.
there's self-help use, and there's recreational use, and there's addictional use for me. And the addictional use becomes when you stop, how do I put this? What I do is I set borders for myself. And I have set them from day one, and I never ever cross them. And if I do, I know that I'm heading down a dark, dark spiral, because I've been there before, where I spent all of my savings on drugs, where I literally fucked up my life over drugs. And it's a very easy spiral to get into. And with anything in life, it's a balance, I think. A balance like you have to make for yourself. Where do you think that you can still use recreationally or for self-help without spiraling and using more, or going beyond your first set borders? That is a big mistake that I made in the beginning. I said I was only going to smoke in the weekend. I started to smoke every fucking day.
Yeah, but
And
how you understand the spiral? Don't you like how you know you're not now in a spiral? How do you know when you engage in a spiral, when you
I
dive in? How do
I
you define that?
literally weigh off literally what I use. And I have like a micro scale, and it's for the past few years, I've set myself a limit of this much per this period. And I haven't crossed that for years, basically. And I do notice, for example, if I take that pain medication, it starts off with 2. And then after a week, I go to 3. And then after a week more, I go to 4. And that's a spiral for me. If I were to spend more money on this than I have budgeted for it, just like with anything, for shopping for clothes, for shopping for games, I have a budget for everything in my life, basically. And if I cross that budget, that's a big red line for me, a big red flag.
So
But
I want
So I
to.
see James is kind of hyped up about the answer and he has
Yes, I'm sorry.
like no patience about answering that. So maybe we should give the word to him.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I actually have answers to all of your questions. Everyone that you have asked the rat. I smoke weed. At first, it was because I've had body pains like my whole life. And when I turned 10, 11 years old, my friends brought over a bowl of weed and I smoked it, and there was no more pain. It was gone. And I was like, oh my God, I've never felt like this before. I've never not had pain in my life. Like, my pain is usually a constant 5, you know? And so, like, imagine trying to do everyday things while being in pain, like somebody's ran over your foot. It's hard, bro. You have to concentrate 10 times more. It sucks. Anyway, so the body, and I have a thing called intrusive thoughts, and intrusive thoughts are basically your brain giving you thoughts that you have never or would never think. And they could be super cool, they could be super dark. But I mean, are you really willing to roll that dice? Because you're going to hear them all day. It's going to be all day, bro. Imagine doing the dishes and grabbing a knife and going to scrub the knife and hearing like 175 times while you're scrubbing the knife, you should just stab your arm. Just stab your arm. You should just stab your arm. Just do it.
Wow.
That's intrusive
Why
thoughts.
is that? Why is that? How that happen?
There's actually a couple of reasons. I can answer that too. It's part of.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it over from you. I'm just going to
you're
butt in
good.
there for a second. It's actually one of the side effects of a couple of mental disorders. One of them is ADHD, and strangely enough, it is documented as one of the strange symptoms from obsessive compulsive disorder. It doesn't have to be what they show in the movies where everybody needs everything lined up or cleaned properly, or have, some people have those rituals that they have to do over and over. Intrusive thoughts end up being a symptom of some of those mental disorders. I, unfortunately, have suffered from that crap my whole life, the intrusive thought thing. It's just, I live with it. It sucks. And you learn how to deal with it. That's all. But again, one more quick thing, and I promise I'll send it back over to you, is
You're good.
from a perspective of somebody here that, I've smoked weed every now and then, but I don't do anything. I don't smoke on a regular basis, anything. I don't take any other kind of drugs. In fact, I drink socially, only when I'm out with friends. So because I suffer from a couple of different mental illnesses that if I don't have control over them, it paralyzes me. My life is on hold. I'm a single dad. I can't afford that in my life. So my control, I realize that a lot of it has to do with a mix of chemicals in your body and of habits in your life. So for me, it's experimenting with what can I do. If I eat better, I'm feeling better. If I exercise more, I'm feeling better. If I change certain habits, those things help me. Because substances, anything I've tried usually really doesn't help me very much. Like weed for me made me feel very slow. And in this business, in this field, I can't be slow. So it would make me feel awful that I can't be as quick into solving problems as usual. I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. Did not realize that was my, a source of a lot of issues. So for the first time for a few days now, I've taken Adderall. It was prescribed now. It's a lot of talk about stigma. A lot of stigma for that drug, for it being very addictive and all these other things. And, they say that that you needed it if it doesn't make you hyped up and, whatever. My brain has been quieter the past few days and calmer than it's probably been in my entire life. It's like, this is a new experience where there isn't 1,000 things going on at once all the time, 24/7. I don't know how it's going to be a week from now. I just started, but I guess I'll wrap this up by saying, to your question, the line between addiction is, and this might be unpopular, but I'm going to say it. It's honestly very blurry, and it's blurry in the medical industry as well. Take an addictive drug that's prescribed, like oxycodone, or something, some opioid pain medication. So let's say you're somebody who suffers from some disease that has chronic pain, sort of like what Wesley was talking about, or some other one. You have to take that medicine, or else you can't get out of bed. There's no, it's not like any exercise is going to help it. It's just some sort of disease, some sort of disorder. It's sort of extortion, right? Because it's either you take this or you stop taking it, and then you can't function. So and I don't have the answer to this, but where is the line between depending on something to be able to live your life successfully and addiction? There's a chemical difference, right? And one answer is like, hey, if you remove the pain, if you fix the pain and you still are taking the pills, that's a sign of addiction. But it's a pretty blurry line. What do you do?
Well, that's a perfect segue, Brandon. Thank you so much. So we talked about the intrusive thoughts, right? And I also have a lot of other things going on in my head. My thoughts go 3 times faster than I can pay attention to them. And we'll get into some other things in just a second, but those are the main reasons why I smoke weed. And I smoke high THC strains because they're so mentally effective. They quiet all of the noises in my brain. There's no white noise. I can focus at least on what I'm doing at the moment, right? And it's so effective that I've said, well, it hasn't hurt me. I'm not hurt, right? So why should I stop? You know what I mean? So that's the reason I smoke weed, is because it's the only medication that has not negatively affected me. And I've been able to control what's going on in my head and what's going on, with my thoughts and in my body. But the line of addiction and medication is completely personal, and it's based upon your peace of mind and the quality of life that you have. That is completely personal according to your perception. What's going to give you peace of mind and what's going to make your life quality for you to live, okay? Now, my drug of choice was methamphetamines, okay? And Brandon is taking Adderall, which is an amphetamine, okay? I'm taking methylphenidate, which is also an amphetamine. However, I had to go through an entire internal struggle when I started my medication, because I had not been on medication in 15 years, but I had been addicted to drugs for like 6 or 7. And I came out of my addiction and I was like, fuck, my brain does not feel right. It doesn't feel good. I have all of these symptoms of all of these illnesses that are compounding against me because I haven't dealt with them. And so I went to therapy and I talked to a therapist, and I told her, I said, I don't want to get on medication because then I'll just be an addict again. I don't want to do that. And I really, really, really argued with myself and sat down and thought about it. And I went and talked to my doctor, and I talked to my therapist, I talked to my wife, and I decided that if it ever comes to a point where this medication is affecting my choices of my peace of mind and my quality of life, then I can no longer take this medication, because I'm not willing to sacrifice those two things. And my peace of mind is dedicated on ethics, responsibility, loyalty, and family. And my quality of life that I want to have includes being with my family and being able to pay my bills and being able to be there for the people around me that I love. With those peace of mind and quality of life factors, if any of those are violated, I have to stop what I'm doing and reassess what's going on. That's also why I'm moving to Europe, is because what's going on where I'm at has affected me to a point where it's violating my peace of mind and my quality of life. And I'm not okay with that. So that's the line. That's the line that we're all looking for. And it's very personal. It's very personal. It could be, it could be very different for everybody, but it has to be that way because it cannot be generalized. Because when you generalize it, you hurt people, and that can't happen in this type of field.
I gotta ask then, Elsek, what is your opinion here? Even if it differs, we want to hear all of them. It's just that was a great question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my opinion is that I've never tried anything besides weed. I most likely never will. But my opinion is that I've been consulting doctors that are saying weed is actually healthy. And the reason why I think that's just my crazy opinion, like out of scope to be said, but my crazy opinion is that weed is being criminalized because it helps people and helps them enlighten themselves. Because especially me, whenever I smoke weed and I feel like enlightened, I meditate faster, and my thought process is smoother than ever. So that by itself is a good thing for the person, and that helps a lot. So if you manage to be strong enough to not addict yourself to that, you can like produce high results in life. And the people criminalizing that don't want that because they want you of being addicted, being triggered, being your mind to be obliterated by social media attentions and so on. And that's my theory because why this is being criminalized. I am like my opinion about it is good. I accept that. And about any other things, I have not come to touch with them, and I most likely never will. So yeah, that's my thing.
I agree with that. That's a good one. Oh, sorry, Wes. That's all I was
Oh,
saying.
no, just wanted to add that it's definitely something we should look at on an individualized level as well. Like James was saying, like addiction to like what is addiction to me is definitely different to another person, but it also hasn't been researched well enough at all because it's been criminalized for so long. Like weed has been criminalized mainly because it's a threat to a lot of industries. Hemp is a big replacement for fiber, for paper. It can be used for a lot of things, and it's a big threat to a lot of industries, which is why it's still criminalized to this day. Because here I have alcohol with me. That shit is way more dangerous than cannabis, and you could get it everywhere. I can
The
get
whole
every
cigarettes, the whole cigarettes, the classical cigarettes are more dangerous, to be honest.
Definitely, yeah, and we are
So
just brought up
yeah,
with that notion, but like it's everything can be perceived as drugs to a degree. Like caffeine is a drug. What is a
of
drug and
course.
what's not, right? Like, are vitamins drugs because you also take them in pill form sometimes? Like, what do you define as a drug, right?
Yeah,
And
the point is that you have to make up your own standards, and you have to do what makes you feel good, because you must be so much self-aware and to see if someone is actually helping you or not. And if you are actively willing to see that, if something is good for you, okay, continue doing that. If something is not good, you have to be strong enough to say it no and stop that. For me personally, alcohol is not doing great. I've been like drinking before. I haven't been drinking like for a year or so, half a year or more, and I find myself bad while being drunk, and that's why most of the times I say no to that. But yeah,
yeah,
you have to find the things that makes you good and productive, and you have to find the things that doesn't do that. It's quite the opposite, and say no to them.
I used to drink as well to get drunk, but recently I started drinking just one beer or just one shot of something in the evening just for taste for. And that's different usage as well than what it used to be. Like when I used to drink to get completely hammered, but now I like all of the headaches, the puking, no, thank you very much.
Yeah,
No,
and
no.
that brings up my theory, because when you do something to get like your head hammered by an alcohol or weed, I think you are doing the wrong thing, because genuinely speaking, when you need that kind of treatment for yourself, it's always better to, for example, hit the gym or do something productive. I mean, the whole things with alcohol, weed, and other narcotics is the point here is to be done to amplify your performance or your health or any area of your life. And if you're doing stuff like that just to get hammered in the face, I'm sure that you're doing that wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely respect the people that like James, um, like Wes. You guys that use. I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends that use like weed a lot to maintain. Like I said, I just couldn't because of like what you just said. I've spent many years studying and experimenting with exactly the right formulas to know what improves my life, what improves my state of being, and some of that has to do with facing things you don't want to in your life. Dealing with things that that might be ugly. They might be bad habits that you don't want to admit that you have. Things like that, and being real with yourself does help. And a combination of also throwing it out there. Addiction, say it with me. And anybody who's watching this, addiction is not a choice. Addiction is a disease. It's an illness. It's a sickness. It is not something that people choose to do. So between trying to manage your life that way, to help yourself, and understanding that people that struggle with addiction may need alternatives, they need, assistance in getting to that point where their life is improved, is really, really important. And I don't know any addict that, and I know many that, I don't hear one of them say that they were cured the minute that someone came up on the street and yelled at them, just stop drinking, just stop smoking. Oh man, it's that easy. Just stop it. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Yeah, exactly. So again, it comes back to our core subjects. It's just understanding ourselves, understanding other people.
And
Well, I can argue with that because in order for you to become addicted to something, you have to perform a different kind of choices that can wake you up in that situation. So, and the opposite is true, that in order to escape addiction, you also must have the strong will to perform choices that's gonna actually free you up. So it's all about choice in
true.
your life. Yeah.
It's definitely true. You have to be able to make the choices to go on the road to stop. But people, generally people that struggle with addiction, it's not just one addiction. Meaning there's an addictive personality where some people will be addicted to alcohol, and then if they try gambling, they're more likely to become addicted to gambling or any other kind of urge or substance.
The thing is,
And there's genes for that, I think. But I agree with you on a fundamental level.
And that's where the self-awareness comes from, because if you're self-aware about the things, you must have the ability to control your outcome. I mean the things you do. So you have control yourself, your thoughts, your body, your actions, and
but you don't.
You have. You must.
But you don't. But you don't.
But you have. But you
But
have.
you don't.
No.
No, you don't.
The very
Okay,
first.
let me give you an example.
Right.
Real quick. You just brought up the fact that cigarettes were more harmful than marijuana, right? And what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do? I put in the chat that I would be right back, and I hung my headphones up, and I went and took 4 drags of a cigarette because you said the word cigarette. Now, was that under my control?
It should be.
No, it's not. Okay. So there's 2 parts of your brain. There's the logical part of your brain, and then there's the primal part of your brain. And if you expose the primal part of your brain to enough dopamine with an outside trigger, that outside trigger becomes the source of that dopamine, and your primal brain will take over whenever it has a chance to get to that dopamine, because that's what your brain wants. So the first couple of times could be a choice, but after you build that bridge, you're no longer in control.
That's a basic. So I think you're both right in the sense that they say, as addicts, you always stay addict. You don't get cured from addiction, because once you stop taking your drug, if you just take one sniff of it again, you're hooked for the ride again. And another thing is that if you are addicted and you do want to get off of it, you have to want it. You can't just take the actions and expect the results. You really have to want it from yourself. But to a degree, you do control your actions, but it's like it is limited to a degree as well. Because if I would be in a room and if I saw somebody use my drug of choice, it would be harder for me to control myself. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would definitely be harder.
I want to add one thing here, is that I have seen both cases of what Elsek is saying and what you're saying. There are, and I'm going to tell you, man, it's rare. It is not the common. There are some people that they have the sheer will, and I don't necessarily think it's something that can be taught. I think it's a trait. I know people that have stopped cigarettes cold turkey. They just decided, you know what, today's the day, I'm not doing it anymore. And it can be, maybe you could practice, you could try it, but it is not the common. And I don't think it's a failing on the people that can. But chemical dependence is a really fuzzy subject, because I think that people have control over whether they want to change or not. They may not have control in the moment whether they do the thing or not, but they have control whether they want to start to heal or not, or take the hard steps to go down that road. Like, for example, heroin. There's a lot of heroin around where I am. It's awful. It's plaguing everywhere. Those people, some of them will literally die from withdrawal. Their bodies shrivel up and die because the chemical dependence was so bad that their body needed that to function on a basic level. It may cause other symptoms. There's a lot more science there, but I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's some cases where I have seen people have that sheer will to just decide I'm just going to change. But from my observance, it is not with the majority of addicts that I've known.
LSEC is completely right. Honestly, LSEC is completely right. It is a complete choice. It's a choice to get addicted, and it's a choice to not get addicted. Those are two paths. But what the addict needs at a certain point is the ability to take a breath and make that logical choice. If they never have that time to take that breath, which is usually about 3 months, which is the normal time for being in recovery, okay? If they never have that breath to logically think about the choice that they're going to make next, then they never get out of that cycle. And so it is exactly a choice and a path that you put yourself on with the same amount of focus that you put yourself on the path of destroying your body. And it also comes with added benefits of PTSD, trauma, half remembered situations, memories that you thought you might have had that probably aren't real, but they're real to you. So you have trauma from that too. I've had to deal with all of these things coming back into a life where my brain functions again and I can actually see things in it. And it's crazy on the other side. And I can see that some addicts come out of the other side and they're like, well, I'm more mentally fucked up than I was when I was on drugs. And they just go back because that's normal and that's comfortable, but then again, it does become a choice after that breath and that logical thought pattern. It's a choice.
And the thing I wanted to add is that sometimes, because I know the type of situation why you mentioned, because my mother was she was obsessed with cigarettes, and she was saying that she's gonna die with a cigarette in her mouth. And guess what happened? She survived the heart attack, and after the heart attack, she never smoked a single cigarette to today, to now. So she just quit smoking with just a snap of her fingers because the wife forced us to do so. The doctor said, you should stop cigarettes because it's gonna happen again. And she just said, I quit. So sometimes you have not the will to willingly say stop, but sometimes the wife just forces you to do so. And it's
Yeah,
just a choice. She could have been smoking again, and who knows what can happen. Yeah, so it's always a choice.
That's what hitting rock bottom is like, at a moment, every addict, if they stay on that path, will have a certain point where they have to pick between their drug of choice and death or life and being clean. And at that point, a lot of people will choose the first path as well, and they will die, which I've seen many friends that I had die as well from their addiction, which is fucked up shit. They chose the other path. Anyway, my friends, I would really like to continue this conversation, but it's really late here. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to continue this conversation next week because I think
it's okay with me. It's late here as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we can
I've been
have a part 2.
Definitely, I think it's important to talk about this stuff, so just so people know that they don't have to suffer alone in the first place, you know.
Yeah, I think it's very alienated in our field. I think that even if people have went through situations like this, or they do have, mental illnesses like this, they don't bring it up because it could possibly hurt their employment or hurt, what's going on in their life, and they don't want to be seen that way by people who are around them. And I think that that should not be. I think that we would have less quote unquote imposter syndrome if people would embrace trauma and PTSD and understand that when you're going into a field where you're constantly under stressors, those things are going to come out and they're going to show themselves. And it's okay to come and talk about those things.
And what I
I
can add
say
on to
part.
that, when you people hack and develop exploits and it does not run on the first time, don't force yourself and don't have it to go and drink and do crazy stuff. Try again.
Exactly. I vote
Uh,
that part 2 I would like to bring up next week is mental illness in the tech industry.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Go to
All
bed.
right.
You guys are
Perfect.
exhausted.
Definitely. If you guys have questions for next week, put them in the comments below and we'll definitely have a look at them. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and thanks a lot for joining me, my dear friends. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, amazing hackers.
Yeah, guys.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.